All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Bluecollar Bodybuilding YouTube channel. Today we're going to do a long-awaited Q&A. I've got a bunch of questions lined up from some YouTube viewers and Instagram stories we've had up. We're just going to jump right into it. First question we got from YouTube. It is from Nova Drift 14. Question is it better to train to failure every set? So the answer for that is training to failure. I believe no, not every set. So training to failure all the time spikes fatigue faster than it drives growth. The goal isn't destroying your muscle, it's stimulating the muscle. We all know that mechanical tension drives hypertrophy, not the exhaustion of the muscle, but the actual stretching of the fascia and tension that we put on that. Mechanical tension drives hypertrophy, not the exhaustion of the muscle. So I'd actually suggest that you stop 1 or 2 reps short on most of your sets and save yourself one true failure set for the end of that movement, whether that's a bigger movement like compound movement or some of your isolation work is the way that I would actually structure that. You'll find yourself really driving yourself into a hole if you go ahead every single time, every single set, trying to go to failure, complete true failure. That's going to have to bring your volume down, and it's just not really going to be very easy to recover from. Let's see. Next question we got from Echo Vale _1483 AD. And Echo Vale asks, is eating before bed bad for your gains in regards to muscle growth? So no, it's not bad right before bed. There used to be that old tale of no carbs or no food, a couple hours before bed. That's how you get fat. And we all know you get fat from over consuming calories, but not if it's clean food. Something like a slow digesting protein, casein, beef isolate, eggs, maybe mixing that in with some healthy fats or almond butter or olive oil. That can help keep amino acids elevated and lower your cortisol actually overnight. Feeding at night is fine. It'll equal growth if your calories are kind of dialed in and that's incorporated. So I do think that eating too close to bed, like 5 minutes before you go to bed, is probably not the wisest thing. Might not get the best digestion of that last meal and uptake of the nutrients, but overall it's not like it's going to hinder growth. If anything, if you pick some clean foods and some good options, you're going to do just fine. And I kind of like to add some fat content to my last meal. It just kind of keeps me full overnight. Even though fat's not satiating, really. It just kind of helps slow down a little bit of the absorption of these nutrients and kind of gets you kind of a slow drip through the night. And then you'll kind of wake up fasted. Hopefully that's all digested. Do something like your morning cardio or whatnot. So yeah, I'd say no, as long as you're keeping the food options clean. Next question is, and it's from Sable Motion from YouTube. Do I really need carbs to grow is the question. Yeah, if your goal is to maximize size, yes. Your carbs blunt cortisol. It refills your glycogen. It can amplify the mTOR through insulin signaling. So you're going to signal to your body to actually start building muscle and synthesizing protein. So that's a good thing. So we do want carbs. We certainly, if we get too much protein, let's say, for example, your body's just going to donate some of that protein to carbs and convert it into carbohydrates through gluconeogenesis anyhow. So you might as well save the money and pick the carbs you want, put them in strategically and control the grams and the volume and the weight of what you're consuming yourself. I'd say think of carbs as it's like your recovery fuel, your direct fuel for your muscles to perform. They're certainly not your enemy. So do you need them to grow? In theory, no. But if your goal is to maximize your size in the most optimal way, yeah, we'd want to utilize carbohydrates for sure. Let's see. Right. Next question from Zero Static Dash for friends. Weird names these days. His question or her question is, does more gear always mean more growth? And of course not. Obviously, you need to have a sufficient amount of hormonal balance to make growing easier, more optimal. But more drugs only means more side effects sometimes after a certain threshold. Everyone's going to be different to tolerance. It really comes down to the response. So the real secret is your response, not your dose. So what I might get for a hormonal response in the sense of free testosterone or total testosterone from like 500 milligrams of exogenous testosterone use might be completely different than the next guy at the same size, height, age, everything, experience. They might get twice as much out of that dosage. They might get not, but a little bit less or half as much as myself. So more gear doesn't always mean more growth. Most of the time it's going to be more side effects. You're going to run into scenarios where you're chasing down side effects and trying to alleviate those issues rather than just pulling down your dose, which would be the way to recover it. So I'd say that really that more growth equals your training volume times your recovery capacity times your hormonal environment. If one of those are kind of lagging, adding more gear won't fix it. You're probably just going to need to optimize one of those three variables. Next question from Jerry Masters and some other gibberish after his name. His question is there a peptide for fat loss that actually works? Yeah, certainly. There's quite a few of them, to be honest. Ones that I'm familiar with that have had success in lipolysis, I feel, and as well as kind of like giving some energy to the body by burning fat. Yeah, I've noticed during preps putting people on some of these mitochondrial stacks. So you're looking at like MONC, you're looking at SLU, PP332. There's a couple different peptides that are very common now. You're looking at like AOD 9604, which is, I believe, just fragmented HGH. I think they just kind of renamed that. 5-amino 1MQ. So all of these options are going to find a way to increase your mitochondrial fat oxidation and the AMPK activity pathway. So, but keep in mind, these things are just assistants. They're not going to be the main driver of your success. They certainly don't fat burners of any sort, whether they're peptides for fat loss or they're stuff like clenbuterol, beta agonists, or thermogenics, or thermic uncouplers. All those are not going to replace your cardio or good diet. That still has to be the foundation of what you're doing. But they make your body prefer fat as the fuel source, which makes prep and muscle wasting more efficient for yourself during these cutting phases. So there's definitely ways to utilize them. And again, dose dependent for everybody. So I think the reality is just kind of finding what works for you, what agrees with you, what gives you the least amount of side effects, and kind of building off of that would be the way I'd approach that. So yeah, that's my best answer. Of course, there's stuff that certainly works for sure. Next question, Rogue Season asks, what's the best sleep hack for muscle growth? Honestly, that's a great question because I've had trouble in the past with sleep. A lot of the time kind of comes down to some basic sleep hygiene situations or habits that you build that's going to make your sleep quality better before you even worry about kind of like any supplementation or any medications or anything like that. Making sure you have a set non-negotiable bedtime, you have a wake time, so that way you're kind of giving yourself a spectrum of time that this is pretty much my rest and sleep time. I go to bed at. All right, so technical difficulties. My camera ended up shutting off and running out of battery at the moment we were chit-chatting and going through a question. So I ended up just letting it charge, go to the gym. Figured I'd get this covered tonight, finish up with you guys. So I think we last finished off about a question we had about what's the best sleep hack for muscle growth. Now, I remember we talked about habit building and our ability to set up good sleep hygiene. And what we mean by that is, again, just a good bedtime, a good wake time, and keeping those things set in stone and non-negotiables, as they say. So that's just where you set up a rule and set up a structure that you're doing your best not to break or stray from. And over time, your body will just build to that circadian rhythm and just continue to improve, hopefully, sleep quality by starting at the basis of the body has an ability to know when it's going to bed, when it's going to wake up. You can plot out how much time you're going to try to stay in bed and be restful and recover. So all those things add up. That's just one basic thing that really, I believe, should truly be covered. And then small things like trying to stay away from your phone at the end of the night. One thing that's helped me as well that I've enjoyed is using I'm just adjusting my camera. Using the the blue light blocking glasses. So one thing I never strayed away from is Jackie and I will relax in bed at the end of the night, wind down, and we do put our phones to the side after a certain time. And we'll usually just have our last meal, sit in bed, sit up and watch TV, go through YouTube, or maybe a show we're watching or whatnot. So I still have that TV going, and it can be distractful and keep your mind engaged and stimulated. So the beautiful thing is that having those glasses just block and slow down how do I want to say, dull the effects of all these electronics and blue light that's stimulating our brain, making it more difficult for us to sleep. So that's one thing I really like for sure. That way I'm productive at blocking out that blue light, but I can still watch some television and hang out. And that really just helps unwind and gets me mentally prepared, understanding then that it's getting close to bedtime as well. But the other thing, I'm sure everyone's looking, well, what supplements can we use? What tactics? Are there peptides? Is there this or that to improve sleep? And there certainly is. There's a few different things we can use to our advantage. And one of them would be, so like simple things we can do that are supplemental would be about using magnesium glycinate before bed. I use about 400 to 600 milligrams before bed. That seems to work well, helps you kind of get to bed, stay asleep. And the nice thing is the magnesium is a electrolyte and tends to also help if you do take a little too much. It might make you run to the bathroom at some point. But the nice thing is also in the morning bowel movements, it kind of helps just stay consistent, even throughout prep. You happen to notice that giving some of our clients magnesium improves their sleep, as well as gets them to have a little better BM movements in the morning. And just, again, another continuing routine that is set and put together that's helpful. Glycine helps as well for sure. The other one we have is theanine pre-bed. Keeping your room to kind of a cooler temperature has been shown to help quite a bit as well with sleep quality and just more restful sleep as well. A peptide that can be used that kind of works from some people, but not others. DSIP, Delta Sleep Inducing Peptide, that's touted to be on some research to help with a deeper sleep, getting you into that delta sleep rhythm and that rapid eye movement and kind of extending that period. That's when your rest and recovery is going to be at its best. So those things help well. Growth hormone at the end of the night before bed can help most people. Some people actually too much before bed has ruined their sleep and, well, hindered it or interrupted it. But sleep is your cheapest PED. You really manage that. That's just really one big chunk of your day. You think about it, you sleep for 6-7 hours. That's all recovery time. That's time that your blood sugar is starting to regulate and come down. Growth hormone can be excreted naturally from the pituitary. All these different things like cortisol can be lowered during that period. And true restful sleep is going to recover the muscle better and get you to grow better. So consider those things. Start small with the easy things that you can put in place, like that bedtime, wake time, maybe a couple supplements, and just implement a few things at once. Don't throw the kitchen sink at it. See what works for you and utilize the least to get the most and go from there. That's definitely my tip for sleep. I think that'll be helpful for most people, but finding what works for you might just be a matter of getting into a better routine. Next question we got is from Atlas Gray _ BDDA. How important is sodium for muscle and muscle growth? To be honest, that answer is it's pretty massive. So sodium drives cell volume, hydration into the cell, also helps with the pump in the gym. If we have low sodium, that's usually flat, weak sensation, might cramp a little bit more, really not have full hydration, even though you're drinking water. You do need those electrolytes as well. I prefer using like more light salt, so I'm getting a good balance of potassium, which helps drive nutrients and hydration into the cell as well. That works great, as well as you're getting your sodium intake as well. So, and also keep in mind when you're measuring sodium, having table salt is not 100% sodium. So it's usually roughly about 40% sodium. So let's say we have a gram of table salt. There's probably 400 milligrams of roughly sodium, and then the other 600, the other 60% is chloride. So keep that in mind. So when you're measuring, if you're aiming for a certain amount of sodium, it's different than a certain amount of salt. But it's very important. Just balance with potassium and magnesium, and that'll definitely help. I guess I'd say, depending on body weight and person, could be different, but I'd aim for about 3 to 6 gram range. 3 grams being the absolute bare minimum. for sodium intake per day should do you pretty well. So, and you can also, if you don't salt your meals often, you can, which I do suggest that you implement that, keeping salt in your intra, in your pre or post nutrition, whether that's in your actual intra shake. I add usually a quarter teaspoon of light salt into my intra on top of what the intra already has for sodium, and that seems to help quite a bit as well. So keep those things, keep that in mind for sure. Let's see. Crimson Arc asks, can you use insulin safely in bodybuilding? Yes, but you have to be careful. You have to be precise and have a good understanding of how insulin works. Insulin's certainly not a directly anabolic hormone, but it's one of the more anabolic hormones that we have in the body, kind of in a downstream effect by the way that it's uptaking nutrients to a point that you can supersaturate the muscle with carbohydrates, build glycogen stores quite well by using insulin. And you can manage also when you get good at it, you're also obviously managing your glucose levels to be in a range where we're not building insulin resistance. Now, using too much insulin too frequently, and sometimes when not needed, you can build insulin resistance to that. So if you're overusing insulin, it's going to burn out your insulin receptors, and that becomes a problem. And then cascade effect downstream, you end up becoming insulin resistant. So keep that in mind. So again, what I would suggest is, yes, you can use it safely. It's commonly used, but it certainly can be dangerous if you use too much of it, and going hypoglycemic is not fun. So you definitely want to be careful. Keep some sort of simple sugars around. God forbid your blood sugar drops too quickly or fast or too far below a point where you start to enter the sensation of feeling hypoglycemic. You want to be able to recover from that. So having some sugar around, you can buy glucose tabs that are just for diabetics to take. In case that happens, they can just take one of those, or simple sugars, a half a soda. You don't need a lot. You don't need to start hammering 150 carbs. 10 to 20 carbs will easily pull you out of hypoglycemia. So a couple of pieces of candy, a couple sips of Gatorade, even a full sugar soda, something like that, just having around can help quick. Even, stuff like rice cakes are very high glycemic, so they'll enter the bloodstream quick and pull you out of that issue fast. But if you time it correctly and use it correctly with carbs and amino acids after your training, you can definitely improve your nutrient uptake to the point where you are going to get more anabolic, in the sense, not directly from insulin. It's not like you just take insulin as anabolic. It's just the fact that you're uptaking nutrients more efficiently. So keep that in mind. Yeah, you can. I suggest that you educate yourself on it quite a bit. Ask those that have used it and are familiar with it. And whatever you think you're going to use for a unit dose to start, cut it in half, start there, and then titrate to where you feel you need to use it by judging your glucose, your glucometer as well. So keep that in mind. Yeah, you can safely use it. You just got to be mindful, of course. All right. Next question we got. Where is his name? Question number. Nerve circuit. I don't even know where people come up with their YouTube tags and names, but nerve circuit, we'll just leave it at that. Asks number 10. What's the difference between growth hormone and IGF-1? That's a great question. So I'd consider, so they operate differently, though they are somewhat complementary to each other. So let's envision growth hormone is the signal and the IGF-1 is the worker of the scenario. So growth hormone is going to trigger the liver and muscles to make IGF-1, which drives cell growth, helps with recovery and hypertrophy. Growth hormone also has the ability to mobilize fats and dump them back into the bloodstream so they can be burned as fuel for lipolysis. IGF-1 will directly in the muscle tissue grow that muscle tissue. So they're teammates. They're not substitutes, and one's not identical to the other. The growth hormone triggers that IGF-1 response. You could have high IGF-1 levels, but not a lot of IGF-1 in the cell and tissue, which is what we want. So I do find it kind of silly when guys check their IGF-1 levels. It's a good way to see if your growth hormone's real, is if your IGF-1 is elevated. After taking growth hormone, you can also check your growth hormone levels. But just consider it this way, that growth hormone is going to start the process for IGF-1 to become present, and then growth hormone will trigger the liver and the muscles to make that IGF-1 and grow the cell through IGF-1 being driven or being a part of that cell now and helping with recovery and hypertrophy. The growth hormone itself is a liberating hormone, if you want to look at it that way, and it's got the ability, again, to liberate fat stores back into the ability to use them as energy a lot more efficiently. So that's why it's commonly used to use your growth hormone at night. When you wake up, it's still tapering off, and you've got a lot of fat that has been liberated into the bloodstream for you to use as energy. So yeah, that's the difference between the two. All right, let's get to a couple more quick questions here. Probably save a few of them I'm not too fond of. Mind 14444448. He asks, how important is exercise variety? And I would say that how important is exercise variety? I find that it's definitely not as important as progression of the exercises. So your muscle doesn't know the names of these exercises you're putting together. They know tension and the stretch of the muscle. So just like your muscles can't read what number weight you're lifting, it doesn't know if you got the pin or plate or whatever on 100 pounds or 150 or 4 pounds. But it does feel and sense that tension in the stretch of the muscle. So I would say that the reality is that exercise variety is important for targeting different muscles, but what's more important is that you take the exercises that work for you for that given target muscle and try to progress them over time. If a 10-year span, you're still bench pressing the 50-pound dumbbells and you haven't progressed in reps or weight, you're just kind of lifting emotionally for fun. You're not really actually progressing and moving that weight forward. You're not allowing the body to adapt and then pushing through that adaptation to grow muscles. So if anything, I think that you would want to keep your key driving exercises similar and maybe kind of rotate angles or grip patterns or rep ranges or intensifiers to those exercises. So give you an example, we could do something like a flat bench dumbbell press. Instead of just trying to milk that all the way down to a point where you get to stalling in progress, stick with it for 8 to 12 weeks, a couple training blocks that you're going to cycle through, and then maybe you move to a slight incline. Or you decide instead of doing a neutral grip, you're going to do a pronated grip on the press. You might add in a different stimulus to help you adapt to so you can push through with better strength the next time, like drop sets or rest pauses. So it's only going to improve your form and your ability to perform that exercise and move forward. I don't think it's very important to just switch exercises for switching them sake, for the sake of switching them, as much as making sure that you progress through the ones that are your key movements. And then when that gets a little stale, find ways to make it more challenging. If you really find that to be a comfortable movement, that you can target the muscle, you can engage the muscle, you can stay mentally connected to that muscle. That's what I would suggest. Find something like a different angle, grip, rep ranges. Just don't do everything at once. Slowly implement one change and then run that for another 8 weeks and move from there. All right. So Hollow Frame Brian C asks, does lifting slow build more muscle? Yes and no. So the eccentric of your movement pattern, eccentric control builds tension. It's not going to magically just grow muscle by the slower you go, the better. But you want to have, the key is going to be having intentional speed patterns that you want to follow. So research has shown that fast concentrics of the pressing of motion of the exercise and a moderate eccentric when it comes to timing and your tempo of that movement best activates the higher threshold fiber. So something like a very quick explosive press on that chest press we're talking about, and then a slow 2 to 3 second eccentric, allowing the weight to sit in the target muscle and not the joints that are moving. So we wouldn't want to restrict the weights with our triceps and shoulders as it comes down, but allow the chest to stay engaged and spread and open and be the restricting part of the muscle, so the weights just don't fall and you catch them. You're actually allowing tension to build in the chest as the weight comes down and then explode forward. So having intentional speed and lifting with intent is going to be more important than just how many seconds we're counting. So it's kind of like, instead of shooting a gun and spray and pray scenario where more is going to be better in a certain direction, the idea is to target exactly what you want to do and hit that target and make that work for you to build tension in the muscle under the biggest amount of load that you can handle within the rep range that you've set for yourself. Hope that answers that one. It's not like you're going to do a 20-second eccentric and think you're going to be able to do the same weight for 10 reps with all of them being 20-second eccentric. So just increasing your eccentric speed, or the speed of the lift, is not as important as having an intentional pattern that you're trying to get your range of motion to push through, if that makes sense. And I think that allows you to worry less about the speed of the motion and more about how am I pressing through the motion and how am I restricting the eccentric as it comes back. Again, allowing the target muscle to still be incorporated in the eccentric, not just gravity dropping the weight towards you, or gravity or tension pulling the muscle, the weight up on like a pull down. So that's how I would actually probably approach that. All right, let's find one last one and we'll call it a day. Let's see if we can get a fun one. So this one's a pretty good question. It's a good one I think people get wrong. Let's see. So number 18, that would be beta sol plus sign XVY. Beta sol plus sign XVY asks, why do so many people train hard but never grow? My answer for that is that they're training more for the vanity of it, in a sense, or they're training emotionally and not logically. So consistency and recovery don't feed dopamine, but they build physiques. So these people are chasing a certain feeling or sensation sometimes, or they like doing certain things in a certain way because it feels good, or they like that. But is that what's best for the growth of the muscle and the training of the muscle and the targeting of the muscle and the overall goal of building tension, aiming towards progression of that movement pattern as well? That's not what they're doing. They're happy to pick up heavy weights, throw them around. It feels good, triggers dopamine in their brain. But dopamine, again, doesn't feed or recover the muscles. It just makes you happy. Physiques are built through consistency in quality recovery. So, stop trying to train harder and start recovering smarter is the way I would tell you to approach things. Find a method that you can still enjoy, but also eliminate the whole thought process of, I'm here to have a good time. You're here to accomplish a goal. Everybody steps in the gym not just to waste time, because they would find some other hobby. Maybe this is their hobby, but the reality is that 9 out of 10 people are chasing a goal, whether that's fat loss, building muscle, training for a sport. They just want to be more capable or able. So that's why going into the gym, doing your resistance training with intent and attacking that goal is important. And you can train hard towards that and get gratification from that. So again, training harder is not always the key. So I'd suggest stop worrying about always training harder and tickling your ego, and start recovering smarter and getting things to work towards the goal, and then find a joy and pride in that and progress those movements. And you'll find yourself lifting hard still, finding a kick of dopamine when you're hitting goals or getting PRs, and you're feeling the actual muscles that you're supposed to be using getting targeted and growing or recovering, or fat loss. Like another thing I see people, they jump on the treadmill, they put it all the way to the top, they put it to a speed they can keep up with, and then they lean over the thing and hold on to it. you must really like cardio, because you're going to do a lot more of it if you're making it easy for you. You're just going through the motions. Let go of the thing. Don't lean over it. Put the machine down and find a speed and a pattern that you can find steady state, burning calories. You'll find a point where you're hitting the cardio, where you're at a rate where your heart rate's high, and it's maybe a little difficult to hold a conversation. You have to take two or three sentences, 2 or 3 words, take a breath, finish the conversation, finish the sentence. That's a pretty good zone, unless you're actually tracking your heart rate, which would be best. Also, what happens when it gets easy and you started at 15 degrees at 3.5 miles an hour? Where do you go from there when you're not making progress? You've already tapped out your intensity, and now you're going to have to run once you get past 3.5 miles an hour, or 3, or whatever your walking pace is. So keep those things in mind. Have intent when you go in there so you can still train hard, enjoy, take pride out of the things, get that dopamine. You can have the whole cake and eat it too. Or you can have the whole bowl of chicken and rice and eat it too. We're not going to say cake. But I think you get what I'm putting down, is that take that effort that you put into training hard and train hard towards intent, and use intent to hit goals, small goals on each exercise weekly, track that progress and move forward. So, but nonetheless, that's it for me. I hope we can do another one. I got a bunch of questions, hopefully, that Jackie and I can answer together as like a couple. People are always curious about some of our dynamic as two bodybuilders living under the same roof, male and female, husband and wife, and how that goes. So hopefully we can get into one of those episodes soon. But nonetheless, I hope these questions and answers help you guys. If you got anything that you want to hear, you want questions answered, or something you're curious about, whether that's from training, nutrition, PED, mindset, programming of this stuff, or just kind of anything, health in general, I'm sure we could help you out by putting that question in the comments below. I'll make sure that I keep track of them and get to them at some point with a video and do more of these for you guys. So I appreciate you guys watching, and you know the routine helps me big time. Please go ahead. If you don't subscribe to the channel. Keep up with us. I'm trying to put out footage and content weekly for you, and plenty of shorts and educational and vlogs and just kind of our life and how we go about things. So like, subscribe, comment below, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Be good.